thank you for inviting me. Thank you to all the student organisers who've done such a great job to get so many people here. This is bigger than a lot of teacher conferences. Sometimes you don't get this many teachers here, so it's great to see so many people. Why do we do conferences? Why do we have conferences? Conferences are basically about ideas. Ideas only have value if they're shared. If one person has an idea but nobody else knows about it, it's not a very useful idea. Conferences are places where people come to share ideas. And presentations are the method that we use to share our ideas. Now, if you have a very, very good idea with a very, very bad presentation, nobody will ever understand that idea or accept that idea. The presentation is almost as important as the idea. If you are a bad presenter, people will not listen to what you have to say, even if it's very good. Sometimes I hear people giving presentations and they have a fantastic idea, but only 3 people came to the presentation and 2 of them are asleep. So the idea is not really working very well. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about how to do a presentation. And it might be quite different from what you've been taught before. If it's different from what your teachers tell you, ignore them, believe me, I'm right. Okay, I'd like to start by talking about a nice cheerful topic for Saturday morning, which is death. Death and dying. This is my opening topic. In English there is a phrase that we use to talk about different ways that people are killed. Bear with me, there is a point to this. When you talk about them, this is often used in with criminals. If a criminal is sentenced to death, we often talk about death by, and then we talk about the method that they will be used to kill them. One example of that is death by firing squad. So this will be a firing squad, a group of people pointing the gun at the person and they shoot them. That's called death by firing squad. Actually, in Japan, the method that's used is this, death by hanging. And in some countries, they also have death by stoning, where people throw stones. I know it's horrible, isn't it? Sorry about this, but there is a reason to start you off with such a cheerful topic. Recently, there has been another phrase which has become very, very popular, and it's this phrase. What does it mean? This is not my idea. This is if you Google this phrase, death by PowerPoint, you will get 3,500,000 hits. 3,480,000 hits for death by PowerPoint. What does it mean to talk about death by PowerPoint? Of course it's a joke, but what it means is presentations that make you feel like this. A presentation where everybody just feels, oh no, just please finish, it's too long, don't want to listen anymore. And if you do this, if you do a presentation in this way, then your ideas don't get across. Great idea, bad presentation, the idea dies. So when we talk about death by PowerPoint, what's actually dying is the idea. This and the people watching to some extent. If you Google death by PowerPoint and search for images, that's where I found the cat image. These are the kinds of images that you find on Google for death by PowerPoint. There's my cat. But if you look at the other kinds of images that come up, this one here, this one here, what they're talking about is people basically falling asleep. And that the presentation is so boring that nobody wants to listen anymore. And so what is a PowerPoint presentation? What is it that's so terrible? Imagine my topic is farming. I want to talk to you today about farms. A typical PowerPoint presentation might look something like this. This is the kind of slide that people use in PowerPoint. And what they do is they stand at the front and they say, today I'm going to talk to you about farming. What is family farming? Family farm is a farm owned and operated by a family and passed down from generation to generation. It is the basic unit of the mostly agricultural economy of much of human history and continues to be so in developing nations. That's a standard PowerPoint presentation. That's what people do. What's wrong with that? Well, there are a lot of things that are wrong with this. The first one is that it's really, really boring. To hear somebody reading from a slide like this makes it really, really boring. That's one reason people fall asleep. The second big problem with this is that most people can read more quickly than people can speak. So what happens is the presenter's reading here, the audience are reading here, because the audience have already finished. And this often happens with lists. Somebody will say, there are 10 points, and they put them all on here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm talking and you're reading. And as you finish reading number 10, you think, okay, I'm finished. And you look up, and I'm saying, okay, now for number 3. And you go, I'm already on number 10. Probably the biggest problem with this, though, is that people will say, if you do PowerPoint presentations like this, people will say, why am I here? I don't need you, just give me these notes and I'll go home. People will say, why do I have to sit here for 45 minutes to listen to you reading when all I need to do is have those notes and then I can get all the information myself anyway. Now, everybody knows that it's really, really boring. It's a really ineffective way to present. And yet everybody does it. Not just students, teachers do this. Everybody does it. Why do people do this? Why do people use this method? All of you, I guess, have seen this method. Most people think that's terrible. They know it's terrible, but they still do it. Why? There are two main reasons why people do this. The first reason is that it's easy for the presenter, because you don't have to remember anything. All of your notes are here, so you don't have to practice, you don't have to remember anything. Basically, these are my notes. I come and stand up here and I talk. And notice that when I'm reading this, I'm not looking at you. When I lose my connection, it gets boring. When I'm talking like this, I'm talking to you. When I'm talking like this, I'm not talking to you. So the first reason people do it is because it's easier for presenters. The second reason people do it, and this is probably even more important, it's true of a lot of things in Japan. Why does everybody do it? Because everybody else does. Everybody presumes this is how you do PowerPoint. I was doing this presentation for some doctors last week, and the doctors have to go to an international conference and present their ideas. And I said, don't do this. And they said, but that's the golden standard. That's what everybody does. That's what a PowerPoint presentation is. And they're right, but that doesn't make it good. Another thing that I want you to think about is, because most of you are not native speakers of English, when you do a presentation, the most difficult thing for you is the English, I'm guessing. You feel very, very nervous. It's not my language. Oh no, and sometimes you may think, if I could speak English perfectly, presenting would be easy. It's not. The quality of your English and the quality of your presentation are completely separate. Please do not think that because it's not your language that your presentation will be worse. That's not the case. It's possible to have very bad English and give a very good presentation. It's also quite possible to have very good English and give a very bad presentation. If you Google this phrase, if you go and look for bad PowerPoint slides, one of the things that comes up first is this one. Have you ever seen this slide before? This is a terrible, terrible slide. It's really confusing. The colors are difficult to read. There's so much information on it that nobody can really understand it. Now let me tell you two things about the speaker. Number one, the speaker is a native speaker of English. He's American. Number two, do you know who he is? This is Bill Gates, the former CEO of Microsoft. His company invented PowerPoint. And even he doesn't know how to use it. He's famous for being a terrible, terrible presenter. If you Google bad PowerPoint slides, this will come up. If you watch Bill Gates do a presentation, he's really boring. He's a fantastically interesting man, and he's a very, very clever man, but he's not a good presenter. One of the reasons behind Apple's success was the fact that Steve Jobs was an amazing presenter. He was a very, very good presenter. So please don't think that your language is going to affect you. It's not. You can make lots of mistakes, you can have terrible English, and still give a very good presentation. Are you familiar with the phrase golden rule? A golden rule is something we talk about in English. It means something that's very, very important, or something you should always do, like golden standard, a golden rule. I'm going to give you today 3 golden rules for doing presentations. And before I go any further, if you're writing now, that's fine, but let me explain to you something. You don't need to write. The reason you don't need to write is because I have a handout, and on my handout I have the important points from these slides. Now, if you're a presenter, that's a very important thing to tell your audience. Make sure that they know that you have a handout. Because if your audience writes everything down and then at the end you say, oh, by the way, I have a handout, they're going, why didn't you tell me that at the beginning? One other thing you must never do, and a lot of people do, don't give your handout at the beginning of the presentation. Why not? Because they're reading it. People can read more quickly than you can talk. If you're on slide number 1 and the audience is reading slide number 7, you have no connection. Your ideas are not getting across. Let your audience know that there is a handout. Tell them they will get it later. Some people like to write anyway. For some people, writing helps them to remember, and that's fine. But make sure your audience know that they don't need to, if they don't need to. Okay, let's have a look at my golden rule number 1. This is golden rule number 1. PowerPoint is an audio-visual aid. It's for showing images, pictures, photographs, graphs, charts, numbers, those kinds of things. It is not for showing text. So this is good. If you're talking about a family farm, this is a good slide. This is a bad slide. It's the same topic, but a completely different slide. Images are very, very powerful. Images do 2 things. The first thing that images do is they make your audience interested in the topic. What should happen with PowerPoint is people should look at it and say, oh, that's interesting. What's that? And then turn to me and wait for me to explain it. And they connect the image and what I'm talking about. The second really good thing about images is that people remember images better than they remember words. And an image can become like a key to unlock your memory. If I show you an image and then talk for 2 or 3 minutes, after the presentation, you won't remember what I said, but you will remember the image. And when you remember the image, then you will be able to remember what I said. Images help people absorb the information and take away the information that you want to give them. That's rule number 1. Rule number 2 is this one. This is good, this is not good. I think if you're a non-native speaker, you feel that you want to have the English with you. I want my notes, I want to have them with me. Many people actually do read presentations. They will stand at the front and they will read it. When you're a presenter, you need to be speaking. You also need to be close to your screen. I see a lot of students will stand over there and they'll be a long distance from the screen. If you do that, your audience feels a bit like they're watching a tennis match, because they go, when the slide changes, they go like that, and then you start talking and they come back over here, so you've got everybody doing this. You need to have everybody focused on one place and make sure that people are looking at the same thing. That's one reason why you shouldn't read, is because you lose the connection with your audience. If I'm not looking at you, you don't need to look at me. Everybody's looking at me now because I'm looking at you. If I'm looking at my paper, you will start looking at each other, or at the table, or at your iPhone, or something else. As a presenter, my job is to keep that connection with you all the way through my presentation. Reading breaks that connection. The other thing that reading does is it changes your voice. It changes your intonation. It changes the way you speak. You have a kind of reading intonation, and it's really boring. Let me go back and read some of this slide for you. Listen to the way I talk and notice how it's different from the way I'm talking now. A family farm is a farm owned and operated by a family and passed down from generation to generation. It's the basic unit of the most agricultural economy and much of human history, and continues to be so in developing nations. It's not very interesting, is it? What also happens is that presenters know that they shouldn't really be reading, and they feel a little bit guilty about it, so they speed up. And they start reading like this. So many remember the years of farming as a way of life, and we grow only from food, export beef, poultry, gardens from plant to vegetable, do not plant thousands of acres to make a living. Okay? Why are you doing that? Do you want me to read it, or do you want me to listen to you? Never have your audience reading and listening to you at the same time. If you want them to read something, put it on the screen and say, please read that. Give them time to read it. When they've finished, come back and talk to them about it. Okay, so let's not read. And when I talk about reading, there's also one other thing that's very, very similar to reading and something that you should not do. And I feel guilty about saying this because I'm sure a lot of you have done it. And that's memorizing your notes. If you just memorize your notes, your intonation will go to reading style. You will begin, because you're just reciting. Reciting is very, very difficult to do. Even professional actors struggle with reciting. If you start to recite notes that are in your head, you will be boring. That's number one, you will sound boring. Number two, when people can't remember things, their eyes tend to go up. And if I'm trying to remember this now, I'd be going, and again you lose the connection with your audience. And when you lose the connection with your audience, it's very difficult to get it back. The other problem with memorizing your notes is that if you get lost, if you forget what you were saying, if you lose your track, it's almost impossible to get back on because you're not actually sure what you were saying. You need, this word helps you to remember that word. That word helps you to remember that word. If you break the chain, then you can't continue. I play the piano very badly, and this often happens to me with the piano. If I lose my place halfway through, I have to go back to the beginning because I can't start in the middle because I don't know how to start in the middle. And that's a danger with memorizing your notes. Okay, rule number 3 is this. This is good. This is bad. People come to see a presentation to see you, to see the speaker. You are the star of the show, not the slides. A lot of people tend to think because PowerPoint is so big and so powerful and it's in the middle of the room, it becomes almost like a god and everybody's watching, look at the PowerPoint slides. And what you will find is if you're talking to somebody and you start looking somewhere else, they will also start looking somewhere else. The people in the audience will look where you're looking. If I'm looking at you, you look back at me. If I look at this, you all look at that as well. What often happens in presentations is that, as I said before, sometimes students will stand off to the side. Another thing students often do is switch the lights off. If you switch the lights off, you can't even see the speaker. So the speaker disappears, and all you've got is this magical PowerPoint thing going on in the middle. If that's the case, make a movie and put it on YouTube. You don't need to waste people's time. If you are not a native speaker of the language you're presenting in, I understand it's kind of quite scary, and I think a lot of students like the idea that, here's my PowerPoint, please watch this. Press the button. Whatever you do, don't look at me. You can do that, but it's not very interesting. That's the problem. The star of the show is you. Don't be embarrassed about that. People are there to see you. They want to hear your ideas. So here are my 3 golden rules, and this is on the handout. I will give you the handout with these 3 golden rules on it. I'm guessing, I'm very aware that today a lot of you have planned presentations and you're going to do presentations. How many of you have PowerPoint? Okay. What I'd like to go through now is a little bit of first aid, things that you can do today. Of course you can't go and change your whole presentation, but there are some things that you can do that will make it better with just small changes. So I want to have a look at some of the things that you can do first. The first one of these is the magic word delete. What can you delete? The highest level of deletion is delete the presentation. get rid of the presentation. I have seen, really, I'm not joking, at least half of the presentations I watch didn't need PowerPoint. There was no need for it. It wasn't necessary. PowerPoint should be something that you bring in because you have something you want to show. I'm using text there, and I said don't use text. Sometimes it's good to use text if you want people to read something because it's quicker than writing on a blackboard. If you write on a blackboard, again, you have to break the connection. PowerPoint makes it quicker. You can do that very quickly. So sometimes you can use text. So at the highest level, you can delete your PowerPoint presentation. If you don't use a computer, it also makes you more relaxed because you don't have to worry about technical things. Is the cable right? Where is the button? Oh, no PowerPoint. It's actually quite, it's quite a relief. It's quite a feeling of freedom, I think. I think some people think, but if I don't do a PowerPoint, it's not a proper presentation. And a lot of Japanese teachers tend to teach this. PowerPoint at the whole. It's nonsense. If you need PowerPoint, by all means use it. If you don't need it, don't use it. You can delete your presentation. The other thing you can do is delete slides. I'm using Keynote, the Apple software, but both Keynote and PowerPoint have a feature of hide the slide. It means you don't delete it, you leave it there, but it doesn't show in the slideshow. Look through your presentation before you do it and think, do I really need that slide? Is that really, really necessary? Do people really need to see that? If you can delete just 2 or 3 slides, it'll actually make your presentation much better. Okay, the second thing that you can do are the B and W buttons. Do you know what B and W buttons do in PowerPoint and Keynote? Yes? No? They do this. This is the same for Mac and Windows. B, blank. W, white. If you press that button, it switches PowerPoint off. Now that's a really good idea. When you finish talking about one slide and you want to talk about something else in the middle, and then you go on to the next slide, because you can have that period without PowerPoint. And when you do that and you switch it off, everybody focuses on you. They say, oh, he's going to tell us something. This bit's going to be interesting. Use the B and the W buttons. Another way of doing this is to insert a blank slide. Do you remember when I showed you the Microsoft Bill Gates slide? Do you remember before that I was talking to you about whether it's important to have good English or not? I had a blank slide in there. So I use a remote control. So I switched to the blank slide, and then everybody looked at it, and then you all looked at me. Because, oh, there's nothing there. Oh, what's he going to say? It makes you focus on me. So if you have, what teachers often do, what presenters often do, is they want to talk about this slide, and then they want to talk about this slide, and they want to talk in the middle, but they don't really have a slide, so they make one. So they make it so that there is a slide for everything I'm saying. There doesn't have to be a slide for everything you're saying. If you don't need it, switch it off. If you have a list of points, number 1 to 10, that you want people to read, before you show the slide, go blank, switch it off. Talk about your points, and then say, and here they are. You can read them again. Just check that you got all the points. So don't be afraid to use the B button and the W button. Putting in blank slides only works if you have a remote control. If you don't, then use B and W. The third point is that when if you do put text on your slides, don't write full sentences. If you write a full sentence, they don't need you. People can read, they don't need you. If you do put text on your slide, put just a keyword. The keyword's good because it helps you remember. And a keyword is easier for your audience to remember as well. So when we were looking at the slide about family farming, there was a whole thing about tradition. Instead of writing a paragraph about tradition, just write the word tradition. Because what will happen is your audience will look at it and they will say, what's that? And then they will look at you. The role of the slide is to make make people interested and then make them focus on you. If you give them everything, then you have nothing left to give. They don't need you, and you become boring. So if you've got a PowerPoint slide with lots of sentences, delete the sentence and just put a key word. You will remember it. It will be fine. And you can do that in 5 minutes. It's a very, very easy thing to do. Or just delete the slide. But some of you may think, if I delete the slide, I'll forget. I won't remember all the points. That's a good way of using keywords. If you have 5 points and 5 keywords, you will remember 5 points. But the people who are watching won't know what that is until you explain it to them. The fourth thing is to summarize your notes. I could see some of you have like speeches. You've got your speech written down. And that's dangerous because, as I said before, if you get lost halfway through, even if you have your paper, it takes a long time to find the part that you were reading again. Break your presentation down into sections. So I do an introduction. Then I talk, so for example, what was my presentation? I talked about the death by PowerPoint phrase. So that's one section, death by PowerPoint. Then I talk about English ability, and just English ability, that's my second point. And that includes Bill Gates. Then I talk about my golden rules. Then I talk about first aid. That's my presentation. Those are the 4 things. If I have those 4 things written here, I won't get lost because I can come back and look at it and go, okay, I'm here. If you're using notes and you only have notes, it's a little bit dangerous. Try and summarize them. What are the main points of your presentation? If you've got that in your brain, you will give a better presentation anyway. And this is the 5th point, and this is really, really, really important. One of the reasons that people write all the notes is because they say, if I don't write them, I will forget them. Every time I give a presentation, I always forget at least 2 or 3 things. If you've got 10 points that you want to explain, explaining 5 of them well and forgetting 5 is better than explaining 10 of them badly. If you get across just 5 of your points, it doesn't matter. Nobody knows your plan. If you forget, nobody will say to you, aha, you forgot 3 points. How do you know? That presentation's mine. It's only I know that. You don't have to be perfect. What you have to do is connect with your audience. And if connecting with your audience makes your English level go down, or if it makes you forget, no problem. That's more important. The connection with your audience is the most important thing. Okay, so here is my list of 5 points. And again, this is on the handout, which I will give you at the end. But I would just like to say good luck for today. Try and enjoy your presentation. If you enjoy it, your audience will enjoy it. And remember that the key to everything is the idea. It's the idea that you're trying to explain. If people understand your idea, perfect. Everything is fine. It doesn't need to be perfect English. You don't need to remember everything. You need them to remember your idea and think, oh, that's a good idea. Thank you very much, and leave. Okay? Thank you very much.